One thing I really wanted to pick apart here, which look, as much praise as I want to give this guy, because I do think, like I said, I do think he is one of the most interesting governors that we've had in a long time. This was something I heard on the Pints and Diplomacy podcast. He did a live episode where I don't know what bar it was, but he basically did a live podcast with these guys at a bar, and they talked about a lot of different things. They talked about, ranging from, fun stuff to serious stuff, right? It was actually a really interesting episode. But there's one moment in this that really stuck out to me as just being like, God damn it, like he really got this wrong, and I can't help but think he intentionally got it wrong to kind of sell his ticket. You know what I mean? So let's just play it. We don't have any video, so we're just going to listen to audio. But this is from the... when did this aired? May 15th. So this is from the Pints and Diplomacy podcast. And I know a lot of this stuff is kind of a couple weeks ago. I've been recovering this last week with the sickness, so I haven't really been able to podcast. So I'm a little behind on all this stuff. I think it's still relevant. So let's just play this.
That you can't do with that money. These are tax dollars, okay? And this is what people who support this program, the way it is currently enacted, don't want you to know, all right? They talk about school choice. What that means currently in the state of Iowa is that private schools choose their students.
And actually, before we even get into this, I do want to say, so the thing he is talking about is what is it called? It's the Iowa... Damn it, they don't have the chapters up. Oh, no, they do right here. It's what the hell? The Iowa School Voucher Program, which this is something that I actually, overall, I agree the stance on, which is like, we shouldn't be giving money to these private schools. I agree with that 100%. Like, yeah, no, you definitely shouldn't be like, whatever private school, like, shouldn't be, I mean, they shouldn't be getting additional tax money, right? Like, I actually agree with him on that. But, he could have gone about this like from a perspective where it's like, we shouldn't do that. But then he did the same thing that every Democrat candidate does, which they just sidestepped into this position that like makes the problem. Like, I agree with the first part, but then the second part is just so wrong. Anyways, so I just wanted to say that off the bat, like the thing he is talking about, like I do agree that we should get rid of that. But he goes the completely opposite direction with it. Let's actually just skip back a little bit.
Tax dollars, okay? And this is what people who support this program, the way it is currently enacted, don't want you to know, all right? They talk about school choice. What that means currently in the state of Iowa is that private schools choose their students. That's what that means. If it meant that you actually got to choose where you wanted to go, then it would be a requirement that in order to take public money, you had to take the public as your students, right? It also would mean...
Okay, first, what? What? This was just so shocking to me. The idea that schools choose their students. Okay, look at that. There's nothing in the real world that even remotely pictures this or paints this picture. Look, I coming from a family where me and my siblings did go. I mean, not all the time. I think my younger sisters actually did it more than me, but like did go to private institutions. Those institutions did not pick us. They did not like come to our door and be like, "Hey, you're going to our school right now." If any school does that, it's the public schools. It's, oh, you live in this area, so this is the school that you're going to go to. Unless you want to pay for private, which everybody knows is expensive. Like I'm not disagreeing with that point. But the reason that private school is so expensive is because there's the only other option is this public option that is terrible. I mean, he even goes on later to say like, or I guess earlier in the episode, he talked about like how Iowa has dropped to like 26th tier. Like you really think that's because you think what? That's because private schools who statistically have like better numbers than public schools. Like, you think that because they're getting more money that's why it's getting worse? Like, no, it's the complete opposite. It's because if anything, I think, in my opinion, I think it's just because education has been devalued in general. But like, if anything, that has to do with the public sphere. It has nothing to do with the private sector. And if there was an actual free market of education, you would see other schools operate at a cheaper price. Like, the problem would solve itself. I was listening to this podcast. It was actually the Brett Weinstein, Michael Mouse podcast, where they're talking about anarchy. And I think this applies to schools as well. He framed it as like, okay, if you had, they're talking about the post office, or like the mailing system, I guess. If you had UPS, FedEx, USPS, whatever, all the companies, if you had them all come together and say, okay, we're all going to charge, if you want an overnight package, we're all going to charge $1,000. What would happen next? And the answer is a new business would come and say, hey, we're actually going to do this for cheaper because there's a market. And if you had a free market of education, that same thing would happen. The problem is when you have this public sphere that offers it for free, that actually takes away the value of the school. That is the problem. And so, and he kind of gets into this more later, but like, I just thought at face value, that was just really disingenuous. Like in what planet do schools pick students? If that's accurate to anything, it's the public sphere. No private school is like going around and like picking students. It's such a bizarre, and the fact that like nobody even calls this out. And no shade to the guys who are doing the podcast. Like, I reach out to them as well. I really hope that they want to discuss, talk with me or like come on this show as well. But like, the hosts are public school teachers. So it's not surprising that they're not going to challenge them on any of this. That's their vested interest. That's fine. I don't even really have a problem with that. But like, this is just such a glaring thing from that interview that I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. But anyway, let's keep playing.
That in order to, if you wanted to really have school choice, that you would put tuition limits, tuition increase limits on the program. So that you were saying, well, this money is so that these kids can actually afford to attend school here. We're not just giving you money so you can double the price of tuition. They didn't do that either. And
okay, pause it. If you really wanted to make school cheaper, you would get rid of the public system. And that's an extreme step. I'm not saying that he's capable of doing that. I'm not saying anybody in the Republican Party is doing that. But the answer is not to give more money to the public sphere. Like, if you really want to make things cheaper, and he knows this, he probably knows this. Like, if you really want to make things cheaper, the answer is not to give it to the public sphere. The answer is to open up the market, free up the market. I'm being a dead horse with this, but like, unregulated markets get cheaper over time. Regulated markets get more expensive over time. There's multitudes of data to show that. So anyways, let's just keep playing.
Are they really about student choice? Or is that just a nice phrase? Because it doesn't explain the program very well. They say they're about competition. Well, let's talk about competition. If the Packers and the Bears...
Go Packers.
Okay, sorry. I keep interrupting, but like, I love how he sidesteps his point that he makes, which I don't think is a very good point, but like, it's at least like a logical, like academic point, right? In a sense. And then he just sidesteps into like, we're going to go into the sports teams analogy. Like, this is like the only way like these drunk Iowans can actually understand what's going on. I just thought that was funny. But anyways.
Okay, I needed somebody.
I'm a Dolphins fan, so I have no...
We're going to stick with the Packers and the Bears. Sorry. I don't know where you came from on that one.
Yeah.
Tyler, we'll just go back to having our conversation.
I'll exclude him. Can I get another beer?
Beer him.
Gill's Pills.
If you have... Oh, Gill's Pills. Okay. Yeah. My friend Kathy would appreciate that. I'll tell her to listen to the podcast. If the Packers and the Bears are playing on Sunday, and the Bears get to play with their roster that they pay tens of millions of dollars to every single year that they drafted, but the Packers on Saturday night are literally just going to be like, all right, sit down in Saturday night in one of the seats in Lambeau, and if we call your seat number, you're playing on Sunday, right? That is the situation right here. Because it's not competition when the private schools, they get to pick who's going to be on their roster, and the public school is literally like, oh, you need an education? Come on in. We're here for you, right? That's not competition. It's not competition when public schools have to pay to have an annual audit, and private schools, we can't audit them. It's not competition when public schools have to obey open meetings laws and open records laws, but private schools don't have to do that. They get your money and they don't have to let you know what's going on in their programs, right?
Okay. So again, I mean, he again sidesteps into this idea that schools pick their students, which is, it's just bizarre. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't think I've ever heard somebody say that. I mean, look, I'm not like a political genius by any means. I'm not like a political guy. Like, you know, I talk politics on here, but like, I'm not like, you know, whatever. But like, I've just, even like the layman, like I've never heard somebody describe school as like schools picking students. This is just such a, I mean, that whole idea is just so warped. Whatever. I've talked about that already. To then say that is the thing, like he talks about competition, which I like at face value, I agree with. Like, yes, we should compete. Like that is the whole thing with like businesses, with schools, with healthcare, all of it. Like these businesses should compete for that because competition brings the best product. Public brings the worst product because there's no need, there's no drive. It's just such a backwards way to think about this. You know, it's not competitive at all. The public school system. There's nothing competitive about that. The only people who are competing with that are the private schools. And when you have a public option, when you have this option, when you don't actually have a free market, when all the, let's just say like low, quote unquote, low middle tier education, the opportunity for that is all sucked away by this private. Like, yes, of course you're going to see this displacement where there's like a very wealthy private school who can, you know, can charge double what they are really worth, right? What's allowing that to happen is the public system. And let's look, what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite of that? Every school is public. What the hell is competitive about that? Having one type of education where every school has to adhere to certain policies. They're all price capped at a certain amount. Like, essentially, the education is the same for everybody. If you were to have like his worldview, I'm sure, which is like have public school available for everybody, there's nothing competitive about that. Zero. Nil. Nothing is competitive about the public school system. So look, I agree with, and I look at like at face value, I agree with the criticism of like, yeah, it is really shitty that these private schools like just try to take all this money, like just gouge as much money from people as they can. And the fact that they like take this, and like I said in the beginning, like I don't think they should be getting public money. I don't think they should be getting tax dollars. Like I agree with that. But then what's the solution? The solution is not a public school system, a mass public school, giving more money to the public schools. That is not the answer. The answer is the free market. And as you know, displayed right here, we are not going to see a Democratic governor push for that. And also, like the analogy with the sport. I mean, I don't even really want to get into that too much. But like the analogy with the sports, like, why would a sports team do that? Like let's say you have like two like really let's take the names away from it. Let's say you have sports team A, sports team B. Sports team A does it the right way where they want to like, you know, they want to have a competitive market and they're like, okay, we're going to find the best players and we're going to give them trials or like, you know, whatever, right? And we're going to see who's the best and we're going to pay those people to perform. And then you have team B, which in this scenario he's painting has all the same resources. Like he's not claiming that like the Packers don't have the resources that the Bears do or whatever, right? Let's assume they have the same resources and they were just like, hey, we're just going to take everybody that tried out for sports and we're just going to randomly pick one or randomly pick however many team. If I'm understanding what the analogy correctly, like we're just going to pick like a handful randomly. What sports team would do that? That would be suicide. Nobody would like if there was a team who like wanted sponsors and people to back them financially, everybody would be like, no, fuck that. That's a terrible, like nobody's going to win like that. It's the same with the public school system. Like everybody knows that public school systems are shit. The only way that they're good is because of the individuals who have this outwardly like motivation to make it better. It's not because of the public school system that they're trying to make it better. It's because individuals recognize, oh, there's all these disparities, all these things that are disparaging in the system, and I'm going to do my best to make the best of it. Like, but they don't have to do that. The public school system allows them to fuck off. And basically, like, you don't have to, like, especially when you throw in, like, tenure and all the things that teachers have, like, you can be a shitty teacher in the public school system and get away with it. And nothing will happen to you. You will keep your job. You can work for years and years and decades, and you could do the shittiest job ever. And at the end of it, people won't only not criticize you for it, they will reward you. They will say, oh, look at this person for being a public school teacher. You know what happens in a private market, in a free market of education? If you do a shitty job, you lose your job. Okay? If there's a school that hires teachers and they're doing a bad job, they fire them. And then they find better teachers, enabling better quality education. Nothing in the public school system is going to provide that. So the only way that you could sell this way is if you do exactly what Rob Sand is doing, which is creating this fantasy idea that schools pick their students. What the fuck? The only time that happens is in the public school system. And I wouldn't even go as far as to say that the schools pick them. The schools don't even pick them. What happens is you move into an area and the government comes in and says, okay, unless you want to pay for this private option, which is artificially expensive because we've undercut the market and we have taken all the free market out of it and just have a public system, we're going to force you to go to the same school that everybody else is going to in your area. Sorry.